My brother told the family I was a thief to cover up his own crimes. When I exposed him at a family gathering, he tried to pin it on me again, but this time, he had no way out. You'd think growing up in a steel town like Pittsburgh would toughen you up, but in my family, it wasn't the city that shaped us, it was the people in our lives. Especially my younger brother, Ricky. I'd spent the better part of my life defending him, ignoring his messes, and hoping that one day he'd get his act together. But last Thanksgiving, he crossed a line even I couldn't ignore. The day started like it always did. I was rolling out pie dough in Mom's kitchen, while she hovered over my shoulder, clicking her tongue. "Lucy, honey, that crust is looking a bit thin," Mom said, squinting through her glasses. "It's supposed to be thin, Mom." "We don't need to taste all butter and flour with a hint of pumpkin," I replied, pressing down harder with the rolling pin. She sighed, patting my shoulder. "You know your father always liked his pie crust thick." I smiled back. "Yeah, I know. You tell me every year." She chuckled, a soft sound that always reminded me of Christmases when Dad would poke his head into the kitchen to see if Santa's elves were behaving. The thought made me smile, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But then I heard the front door open, and in strolled Ricky, grinning like he was the prodigal son returned. "Hey, Ma." "Luce," Ricky said, swaggering into the kitchen as if he hadn't been late for yet another family gathering. Mom's face lit up, and she rushed over, pulling him into a hug. "Ricky, finally. I was worried you might not make it." He glanced over Mom's shoulder, giving me a smug nod. "Got held up at work, Ma." "Work?" "Right." Ricky hadn't held down a real job in years, but he always had a way of making it seem like he was just on the brink of some big breakthrough. Stock trading, real estate, NFTs, there was always some new thing he'd invested in. I'd stopped asking questions a long time ago. As I turned back to my pie, Ricky leaned over, his hand snaking out to steal a piece of the crust. "Lucy, come on, can't you make this a little thicker? Where's the heart?" I shot him a look, slapping his hand away. "If you want thick crust, make your own pie, Ricky." "Oh, feisty today, are we?" He laughed, his eyes twinkling. "Maybe a little stressed about other things?" I ignored the comment, brushing it off. He always had some snide remark. I'd learned not to take the bait. The rest of the family started trickling in soon after. Cousin Jenny and her husband, Nick, wrangled their twin boys, who promptly started running circles around the living room. Aunt Cora, bless her soul, was talking Mom's ear off about her new meditation retreat and how it opened her third eye. I ducked out of the kitchen for a breather, taking my glass of wine to the quiet of the hallway. Just as I leaned against the wall, savoring the first sip, my phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. I squinted, my brain instantly going into problem-solving mode as I read it. "Notice, unusual activity detected on your account. Please review immediately." My heart dropped. I'd had a few fraud issues last year, and since then, I'd been paranoid. My pulse quickened as I opened the banking app, scanning through the recent transactions. There, in glaring numbers, were multiple charges from an electronics store I'd never even heard of. Thousands of dollars for TVs, laptops, and speakers. "Hey, Lucy, you okay?" Jenny's voice startled me, and I looked up to see her standing in the doorway, concern written all over her face. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff." Jenny gave me a sympathetic look. "Girl, it's Thanksgiving. Leave work outside the door. You need a refill?" She held up her own wine glass with a wink. I nodded, holding up my glass in silent cheers. But the whole time, my mind kept drifting back to those charges. Something was wrong, very wrong. That night, I filed a claim with the bank, convinced it was another case of fraud. But a nagging feeling in the back of my mind wouldn't let me relax. The charges had been made locally, all picked up in-store. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, but every time I replayed it, one face kept popping up: Ricky. A few days later, I got a call from the bank's fraud department. The woman on the other end was polite, her voice calm but serious. "Ms. Reynolds, we've tracked the charges, and we believe they were made by someone with close access to you. All purchases were made at local stores, picked up in person. Do you know anyone who would have access to your information?" My stomach twisted. My hands clenched around the phone as I muttered, "No, not really." But the more I thought about it, the harder it became to ignore the possibility. Ricky had borrowed my laptop a few weeks back, claiming his was acting up. It had seemed innocent enough at the time. But now? The next day, I called him, trying to sound casual. "Hey, Ricky, got a weird question. You wouldn't happen to know anything about some charges on my account, would you?" He laughed, but there was a tension in his voice. "Lucy, what are you talking about? Why would I know anything about that?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "It's just, someone's been making charges from my account, all local pickups. Thought maybe, you might have seen something?" "Luce, come on," he said, his voice turning cold. "Are you really accusing me of something here?" I paused, swallowing hard. "No, Ricky, I'm just asking if you know anything about it. Well, I don't, he snapped, his tone sharper than I'd expected. Maybe you should pay more attention to your accounts. The call left me feeling sick, but I didn't push it. Instead, I let the suspicion simmer, determined to keep my eyes open. But apparently, Ricky was one step ahead. Christmas rolled around, and this time, I walked into Mom's house with a sense of dread rather than excitement. The whole family was there, from Jenny and her kids to Uncle Rob, who was already 3 beers deep. As I walked in, Aunt Cora pulled me aside, her face etched with concern. "Lucy, honey, can I ask you something?" She glanced around, lowering her voice. "Ricky's been talking about, well, he says you've been having some money problems." I blinked, stunned. "Money problems?" Aunt Cora nodded, patting my arm. "He mentioned you might have borrowed some money from him and hadn't paid it back yet. Said he was worried about you." I clenched my teeth, fury bubbling under my skin. "I never borrowed anything from Ricky." She gave me a sympathetic look. "I figured it was just him talking. You know how he can be." But I didn't know how he could be. Not like this. If he was going around telling people I was struggling with money, that meant he was trying to cover his tracks. He was setting up a story to make me look guilty if things went south. I felt a chill settle over me, anger mixed with betrayal. I scanned the room, finding Ricky laughing in the corner with Nick, talking about some investment opportunity he'd been working on. I took a deep breath and made my way over. "Ricky," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He looked up, his smile fading slightly. "Hey, Luce, what's up? Can we talk outside?" His eyes flickered with something, but he shrugged, following me onto the back porch. I turned to face him, crossing my arms. "Why are you telling people I'm struggling with money?" He scoffed, feigning innocence. "What? I just mentioned you were going through a rough patch. It's called concern, Lucy. Family cares." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "Concern? Really? Is that what you call stealing from me?" He took a step back, his face twisting in mock horror. Whoa, stealing? You've got to be kidding me. Look, I know you're having a hard time, but don't try to drag me down with you." "Having a hard time?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "Those charges weren't mine, Ricky. I know it was you." "Oh, please," he sneered. "Prove it." The smugness on his face was infuriating, but I kept my composure. "I don't need to prove anything to you. I just need Mom and the family to know the truth." He laughed, leaning in close. "You think anyone will believe you? Mom already thinks you're stressed out. Aunt Cora thinks you're in debt. I told them all out of concern. They'll believe me over you any day." Something in me snapped. I'd spent my whole life covering for Ricky, making excuses for him. But not this time. I stepped back inside, and with shaking hands, I pulled out the stack of receipts I'd gathered from the bank. I took a deep breath, looking around at the family gathered around the living room. "Mom, everyone," I started, my voice trembling but loud. "I need to show you something." Mom looked at me, concern and confusion etched on her face. "Lucy, what's going on?" I held out the receipts, my hand trembling. "These are all the charges that were made on my account. Thousands of dollars, all picked up in person, signed for by Ricky." The room went silent. Ricky laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Lucy, what are you doing? This is insane." "No, what's insane is you stealing from me and trying to make everyone believe I was the one in trouble." Mom took the receipts from me, her face pale. She scanned through them, her eyes widening with each page. "Ricky, is this true?" Ricky's face twisted, anger flashing in his eyes. "Mom, come on, it's just a misunderstanding. Lucy's blowing this way out of proportion." But I could see the doubt in Mom's eyes, and I pressed on. "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. I've been trying to handle this quietly, but Ricky went too far. He told everyone I was struggling with money to cover his tracks." Aunt Cora gasped, clutching her chest, and Nick muttered, "Unbelievable." Ricky looked around, desperation creeping into his voice. "You're all really going to believe her? She's always been jealous of me, always trying to make me look bad." "Jealous of what, Ricky?" I shot back, my voice cracking. "Jealous of you lying, stealing, manipulating? I was done covering for you a long time ago." Mom put a hand on Ricky's shoulder, her voice trembling. "Is it true, Ricky? Did you take her money?" He shrugged her off, looking away. "This is ridiculous." But the silence that followed told us all the truth. Ricky left that night, and I haven't heard from him since. Mom's heart was broken, and a part of me still aches for the brother I wish I'd had. But sometimes, telling the truth is the only way to find peace, even if it costs you a relationship. In the end, family isn't always about blood. It's about respect, honesty, and knowing who will stand by you when the world goes dark. And though my family isn't perfect, I'd rather have the painful truth than live in a beautiful lie. After Ricky stormed out that night, I thought I'd feel relieved. But as I stood there, the aftermath of his deceit settling like dust, all I felt was exhaustion and a hollow ache in my chest. Mom looked shattered, her hands clutching the receipts, and the rest of the family was still reeling from the revelation. For years, they had seen Ricky as the charming, lovable one, the golden boy who just couldn't catch a break. Now, the illusion was shattered. I didn't hear from Ricky for weeks after that. No one did. I'd finally exposed him, yet instead of feeling victorious, there was a strange emptiness. But that feeling didn't last long because, in true Ricky fashion, he wasn't done yet. It started with strange, petty accusations coming my way. Some people in the family started getting anonymous messages that hinted at my supposed unstable mental health and financial recklessness. Jenny called me one night, her voice a mix of sympathy and worry. "Lucy, I got this weird message on Facebook. Someone saying you've been lying about the whole thing. That you've always been jealous of Ricky's success, and that's why you went after him." I sighed, the frustration building. "Jenny, that's ridiculous. You know the truth." I know. But he's really not letting this go, is he?" It turned out Ricky was trying to rebuild his narrative. He started calling Mom, using every manipulative trick in his book. "You know how Lucy is, Ma," he would say, dripping with fake concern. "She's always had a grudge against me. I mean, remember the time she got mad because I borrowed her car? She's always been a little uptight." For a while, it seemed like he was getting to her. One afternoon, Mom called me, her voice hesitant. "Lucy. Honey, I don't know what to believe anymore. Ricky. He's saying you've been angry at him for years. He says maybe this is some kind of revenge thing?" "Mom, come on," I replied, exasperated. "You saw the receipts. You know what he did." "I know," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But he's my son, Lucy. How can I believe he'd do something like this to his own sister?" I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my cool. "Mom, this isn't about family loyalty. It's about the truth. Ricky lied to you, stole from me, and now he's trying to make me look like the villain because he can't own up to what he did." Mom didn't respond right away, and I could feel her torn loyalty tearing us both apart. "I need some time, Lucy. I need time to think." After that, I knew I had to do something. Ricky wasn't going to just disappear quietly. He was trying to weasel his way back into everyone's good graces, and he wasn't going to stop until he'd painted me as the villain. I realized that if I wanted to protect myself and get some real closure, I'd have to expose him in a way he couldn't refute, in a way that everyone would see for themselves. I was done with subtle hints and quiet accusations. It was time for a real confrontation. I started gathering everything I could: bank statements, text messages, any scraps of proof I could find. I even went to the stores where he'd made the fraudulent purchases and asked if they had security footage. By some stroke of luck, or maybe karma, one of the store managers remembered Ricky. He'd caused a scene when he tried to return one of the items for cash, and they had security footage showing him signing for it with my card in hand. When I watched the footage, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. There he was, plain as day, grinning his way through a scam without a second thought. And here was my smoking gun. For weeks, I prepared, calling in favors and piecing together every shred of evidence that would finally nail him down. I decided the family's next big gathering was going to be Ricky's undoing. It was a sunny day in May when we all met up at Aunt Cora's for a spring barbecue. The whole family was there, including Ricky, who waltzed in like nothing had happened, grinning, shaking hands, and playing the role of the prodigal son who'd simply had a little misunderstanding. I kept my distance, watching him work his charm on everyone, knowing it was only a matter of time before his facade crumbled. When everyone was settled around the patio, I stood up, holding a stack of papers in one hand and my phone in the other. I took a deep breath, catching everyone's attention. "Everyone, I have something I need to say," I began, feeling my pulse quicken. "It's about Ricky." Ricky froze, his smile faltering for just a second before he caught himself. "Oh, Lucy, come on. We're at a family barbecue. Let's just enjoy the day," he said with an easy laugh, but there was a hint of panic in his eyes. "No, Ricky," I said, my voice steady. "We're doing this now." I pulled out the receipts, one by one, and began passing them around. The family murmured in confusion, their eyes widening as they saw the dates, the signatures, Ricky's signature, on each one. "Those are the charges Ricky made on my account," I said, my voice loud and clear. "For months, he's been lying to all of you, telling you I was the one struggling with money. But this is the proof. Here's every transaction he made, signed by him, all on my card." Ricky's face went pale, his smile dropping completely as the room fell silent. He tried to laugh it off, shaking his head. "Lucy, this is insane. I didn't sign those. Anyone could have written my name." "Oh really?" I said, taking out my phone. "Then maybe you'd like to explain this." I played the security footage from the electronics store. Everyone could see him clearly, standing at the counter with my card in his hand, his face unmistakable. There was no escaping this one. Ricky's face turned red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He tried to stammer out an excuse, but no words came. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Ricky. You lied to us? He looked at her, his face a mixture of desperation and rage. Mom, it was a mistake, okay?
I needed the money, alright?
It's not what it looks like. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like, I cut in, my voice filled with years of pent-up frustration. You stole from me, Ricky. You lied to Mom, you lied to everyone here, and then you tried to make me look like the problem. Aunt Cora shook her head, disgust clear on her face. I can't believe this, Ricky. After all the times we've helped you. The family murmured in agreement, their faces filled with anger and betrayal. For the first time, Ricky was completely alone. The charm that had carried him through life had finally run out. In one last attempt to save face, he threw up his hands. All right, fine. I messed up. But Lucy, you're no saint either. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous of what, Ricky? I shot back. Jealous of the lies, the manipulation, the fact that you don't care about anyone but yourself? I spent my life covering for you, hoping you'd grow up. But I'm done. And it looks like everyone else is too. He looked around, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for any hint of sympathy. But there was none. Even Mom, who'd always defended him, looked away, her face filled with hurt. Get out, Ricky, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Just go. He looked at her, his face crumbling, but he didn't argue. Without another word, he turned and walked out, his shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions finally pressing down on him. As he disappeared down the driveway, a heavy silence fell over the family. I felt a mix of relief and sadness, but mostly, I felt free. The burden of Ricky's lies was finally lifted, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for standing up for myself. Mom came over, her eyes red with tears. Lucy, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you from the start. I hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of family, a real family, around me. It's okay, Mom. It's over now. We spent the rest of the day together, healing, laughing, and finally moving forward without the shadow of Ricky's deceit hanging over us. He never returned to another family gathering, and I haven't heard from him since. But for once, that felt okay. I realized that sometimes family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands by you when it matters. And I'd finally found mine.